So, this article from BuzzFeed, which is titled Gen Zers Are Sharing What They Dislike About Their Generation, and they didn't hold back. That's the title. So, I want to read all these things that they're saying about their generation. I think there's 17 on this list. I'm going to read them, then I'm going to comment on them. The first one is I dislike that Gen Z typically gets offended often, but at the same time, our generation has a lot of the same bullying tendencies of older generations. I would say, as an older millennial, this seems not just a Gen Z thing. I would say millennials were a lot like that when they were younger too. So I think this is just part of being young that you you get offended much easier versus once you get older, you kind of have more thick skin. I know that definitely as I've gotten older, my skin has definitely gotten thicker when it comes to not getting offended by little things. So I just think that's a young person thing more than anything else. So the second thing is obsessive labeling, body image issues, narcissism search with social media, self diagnosing symptoms, and chalking it up to XYZ being armchair therapists, ironically, social justice warriors, with the inability to be open minded, addicted to fame and content creation, and being a SoundCloud rapper, stupid slangs, etc. So I definitely believe this is a Gen Z thing. I've noticed a trend with Gen Z. They like to even diagnose themselves and say like, "Hey, I have anxiety disorder. This is why I'm this way," or "I'm this way because I'm ADD," or blah blah, to kind of excuse their bad behavior. So I have noticed those types of things from them. So I definitely believe this is more so a Gen Z thing than even a millennial thing. So let's go to the next one. Number three. They want to change the world, but the only way they think they can do that is by making self-involved TikToks. So I would say this is probably Gen Z specific, but it's kind of similar to the millennials. I think if TikTok existed, especially when the older millennials were around, we probably would have made stupid videos also on TikTok about trying to change the world but not actually doing anything. So I think this is definitely Gen Z because of the technology, but I would say it shares a lot of things in common with just younger generations, just kind of like that fake social activism where you think you're going to make a difference because you're just young and naive, but you don't really do anything. So the next one is number four. A lot of us are really performative. We talk about social justice on social media, but in real time, they're problematic and fat shaming people. I would say millennials are probably like that too. That in the sense that they talk about social justice and social on social media, but they're hypocrites to a large degree about it. So I guess we'll say it's a Gen Z thing, but I would say millennials are very similar in that regard. Our generation has an insatiable need for attention. So I'm gonna give that to Gen Z. Granted, millennials loved attention too, but I think growing up with social media has amplified that with Gen Z. It's much worse for them than I think even the millennials because actually as an older millennial that I got to grow up without having to deal with social media, which I'm very thankful for. So I'm just not obsessed with having that attention, especially from a bunch of strangers online. I like to be private about it. So I think that's something Gen Z suffers even more from millennials. Granted, you could say the younger millennials kind of did grow up with social media, but one thing you can say about Gen Z, they can't even remember a time when social media didn't exist. So I definitely think that plays a huge role in their obsession for attention. Number six, Gen Zer here, who's 15-year-old, comments on this. What I like about our generation is how accepting we are to people of all orientations, or at least that's the case where I live. What I dislike about my generation is that there are tons of people who care way too much about someone else's opinion. Yeah, I think that's definitely a Gen Z thing. I have noticed when just interacting with young Gen Z kids of different races across the board, they tend to be more tolerant than even millennials. I definitely see that, so I agree with that. And I do believe that they also do care too much about what someone else thinks about them. That's definitely true from what I've seen. Number 7, the dumbass trends we start, the Tide Pod Challenge, the Benadryl Challenge, and so much more. Yeah, I gotta admit that these types of challenges are pretty stupid, even dumber than anything the millennials have ever come up with. Just yeah, that's definitely a Gen Z thing. You guys own that one. That is pretty stupid, I have to say. I've seen those things. I just shake my head like, what's wrong with you guys? And number 8, Gen Z is distinctly nihilistic, and I hate it. I understand why. And I feel it myself sometimes, but I feel like it's the reason why so many of us struggle with mental health issues. 99% of people were like, LMAO, life is pointless, but don't worry, I'm fine or not fine. Yeah, I think this is definitely a Gen Z thing. I'll say what the millennials we had over Gen Z was a lot of us got to grow up during the 90s, which was a booming time economically. So we always had the illusion, I guess, and optimism that life could be great in America if you just work hard, you can have everything. That was really the illusion of the 90s. And I would say that illusion didn't really come crashing down until like around 2008. But a good chunk of us, grew up during that time period, became adults right before '08. And so we at least had that going for ourselves. Where I think Gen Z, you guys just grew up in a world where everything was shit from the beginning, from the moment you were born. You grew up in America, post 9/11, that was pretty shitty. And then just the financial crisis, the Iraq War. You guys are actually, that was your childhood just growing up through all those things. So, yeah, you guys have experienced a corrupt America where dreams are not possible. You've seen it in front of you. So I definitely believe that's probably why you guys are nihilistic. And plus, you saw millennials fail and struggle, so you're probably thinking like, hey, just what's the point of trying? You just can't get ahead. So I definitely believe that's something that your generation owns for sure. As someone of Gen Z, I generally don't understand my own generation. I find a lot of the vocabulary very cringy. So that was number 9. And I do agree with this. I don't like Gen Z slang. I hate the slang term finna. That to me is one of the dumbest slang terms ever. And fitna. So you guys are coming up with some really shitty slang terms. Not a fan of them. Maybe that's just my older millennial self just showing my age. But man, your slang terms are pretty stupid. So the next one I like to read is widespread vaping. It's such a trend. Everyone does it. And the ones who argue it's not bad for them are even worse. So that's number 10. Yes, this is definitely a Gen Z thing. You guys are obsessed with vaping. And one thing I can say about my generation of millennials, we're like the first generation where the tobacco companies actually lost money due to all the anti-smoking ads that came up during like the early 2000s. So that had an effect on millennials, discouraging us from getting into smoking cigarettes. And we didn't do it because we just saw how bad it was. It was reinforced every day to us growing up and seeing these commercials about it. Whereas with you guys, you had no knowledge that vaping is actually as bad as smoking cigarettes. There was no knowledge about that. So you kind of guys got tricked into it. You also thought it was a cool thing. Luckily for us, vaping didn't exist when we were coming of age as adults. So, yep, that's something you guys own. I would say number 11 is everyone is trying to be quirky and an activist without doing the work. I would say definitely quirky is something Gen Z definitely owns. I really don't get their quirky humor. So to me, that's definitely a generation thing. I do find it weird and just strange, to be honest. The Gen Z sense of humor, not a fan of it, to be honest. So showing my older millennial self on that one. And number 12, Gen Z influencers are toxic and must be stopped. And our generation does not dress their age. That definitely could be true, but I think that's not just a Gen Z thing. When I can remember when millennials when we were super young, we were in college, we didn't dress appropriately either. I just remember the baggy pants was in and just the baggy shirts. We just all dressed like we had come out of a garbage can if you look at the early 2000 pictures. So I would say that's just part of being young. You dress stupidly when you're that age, so that's what I chalk that one up to be. Number 13, I hate this trend of copying and pasting phrases everywhere as a way to call people out. Like, I don't know about that one, Chief. Shit's so annoying to read everywhere, and it's not even funny stuff to begin with. So I don't even know really what this means, this trend of copying and pasting phrases everywhere. So that's definitely a Gen Z thing because as a millennial, I've never heard about that shit or done that stuff. Number 14, screaming and shouting, freaking out when meeting their favorite celebrities. I get you're happy, but you're invading their privacy and making them feel uncomfortable. I wouldn't say that's just a Gen Z thing. I think a lot of people do act like freaks and scream out loud when they see their favorite celebrity come up. Granted, maybe Gen Z is worse than other generations, but I can definitely believe that when I was younger, granted, I never did get really excited about a celebrity. So, yeah, I guess maybe that's a Gen Z thing. So I'll give them that one. The way that Gen Z, number 15, the way that Gen Zers are amazing at face tuning, they grew up with it, so they're really good. You cannot even tell what's real anymore. Yes, that's definitely a Gen Z thing. I know a bunch of Gen Zers who can alter their pics online just by doing editing, and they can make themselves look lighter, darker, just edit their features the way they look. Definitely something Gen Z has perfected when it comes to just even the dating game, the way they alter their pictures to make themselves look a lot different than what they are online. So yes, that's definitely Gen Z right there. The 16, the hypocrisy. People will go on a shopping spree in Shane every 2 weeks. Meanwhile, the same person is probably worried about climate change. That's just a what I call being a young thing right there. So I don't think Gen Z just owns that one. I think all generations were pretty dumb like that when they were super young. 17, the broccoli haircut. Yes, that's definitely a Gen Z thing. I did not see that being popular with millennials. So yeah, you guys own that one. So yeah, this was just me commenting on all those 17 items on this list. Let me know what you think.